All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin our meeting. Before we do, I'm going to stand for a moment of silence, and I ask any of you who may be interested to stand with me, and I'm going to follow that with a pledge of allegiance to our flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jeremy, you got me. All right, we're going to go ahead and call to order the June 21st meeting of the Sumner County Board of Education. Mr. Johnson, do you have the roll call? Yes. We will note for the record that Mr. Hale and Ms. Cox are absent. Next item on our agenda is adoption of agendas. First up is approval of the consent agenda. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Wise, a second by Mr. Duncan.
Mr. Chairman, there on page 4 and 5, there are some comments that I would like to make on the consent agenda. It will not have anything to do with the voting. Would you like me to pull them off or just make the comments?
You have a comment on item 4 and 5?
On page 4 and 5.
You can go ahead.
Okay. In reference to something that Ms. Dunn has referred to on several occasions, and I would just like for, on the first school mentioned there, the amount of money that it shows for chorus show. On the second one, on the second school, the jazz band. The third one, drama teacher, Golden Girls coach. And the next page, on page 5, drama teacher. And the next school, the dance coach. And all these things I know have been very important to some of us on the school board, and yet this money continually it's coming out of school funds, where it's my personal belief that, you know, we need to be supplementing that rather than coming out of school funds, which causes problems financially for other situations in these schools.
Mr. Gregory, so you're not wanting to change any action on the board? You want to leave it on the consent agenda?
No action, just I want to bring it to everybody's attention.
Comments are noted. All right, Ms. Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. And just a piece of information that goes along with that, I've been doing some research on that specific thing today. And I know for a fact that one of these schools where it lists some of these amounts, that money did not come out of the money that is designated to the principals, that money came from parents, from donations and sponsors and things of that nature. So it, you know, some of that money that's coming in there as supplements and as reimbursements for things is coming from our parents. So I did double check on that today because I was looking at the same numbers you were. Second question or second comment on these school buses that were in here. I talked with several school bus drivers recently, and they are encouraging me to mention that they really want the heated mirrors on the buses, and I didn't see anywhere in there where, I may have missed it, where it had anything about that, but I didn't know if that was something we could look into or how we go about checking on heated mirrors for those buses.
Well, I can tell you we're starting to get a little beyond my area of expertise when we're talking about specifics like that on a bus. I don't know, is Clint Barnes here? Ms. Dursky,
He may be out of town. I'm going to try and see if I can get a hold of the purchasing coordinator to see if she recalls if those were part of the bid.
All right. I'll tell you what, let's do, if it's all right. Are you going to try and do that right now, Ms. Dursky? It's all right, board, let's just pull off the bus bids off consent. We'll put it under new business as the very last item. All right, any other comments on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right, next is adoption of the regular agenda. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? Motion by Mr. Gregory, a second by Ms. Silkwood. Ladies and gentlemen, you will notice that we do have a revised agenda that was placed in your packet, and we've got several items to add to the regular agenda. It should be in each of your boxes there. One item under unfinished business, consideration of revision to policy JHA, and then new business. It looks like we have several items that have been added.
Yeah, and if you'll look in the revised agenda that's in your packet, all that's reflected in the revised agenda. Now, some of these were already in the agenda, but we made some last-minute changes to the policies. So if we just, when we get to that portion, if you'll just look at this version instead of the version that's in your packet.
Mr. Wise?
Are all of these matters on first reading? So they'll go to the study session?
Except for JHA, it's a second reading, but it was just a matter of adding in a number and a reference, I believe, was what was added in. It's pretty much the same thing as what you've seen before. The policy CD, bullying, harassment, and retaliation, that's got a time-sensitive issue on it. We've got to try to get it in our student handbook, so we really need that looked at and addressed ASAP.
Any other questions on the regular agenda? All right, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? We'll show that passes. Next item is consideration of minutes. First up is the May 17th, 2011 regular meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Mr. Brewer. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Gregory. Any discussion on the regular minutes? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? So those have been adopted. Next is recognition and hearing of the delegations. And somebody's going, is this Katie? Katie Legg, is that right? Is she here? Katie, if you would, come on up to the podium here and meet Mr. Gregory. Mr. Gregory?
For all of you who think you play golf pretty well, you need to listen for the next few minutes. But the first thing I want to say concerning about Katie, her grade point average was 3.85. She graduated with honors, and she was a prom queen. So she's done a little bit more in high school than play golf. But I would like to share with you a couple of actually a couple of pages. I had problems. I had to eliminate just a little bit, Katie, but Katie started playing golf at when she was age 10. As a sixth grader, she was the Dogwood Hills Junior Club champion. As a seventh grader, she was a Hunters Point Junior Invitation 10 and 12-year-old champion. As an eighth grader, she won the Tennessee Girls Junior Amateur. As a freshman, she placed third in the Westfield Junior PGA Championship for 13 through 15-year-old division. She was a district champion and runner-up in regional high school division. And her season average for 9 holes as a freshman was 40. As a sophomore, this gets a lot better. As a sophomore, she qualified for match play in the Metro School Day tournament and made it to the semifinals and was district champion and runner-up in regional and high school division. She was voted as the PHS Golf MVP of the year, and her season average was 38. Her junior year, she was runner-up in Metro Schools Tournament, All-County Girls Golfer of the Year, was district champion and regional runner-up, and also the Portland High School MVP for the season. And her average for the 18 holes that year was 79. Now it really gets good. Her senior year, Metro School Days champion, Tennessee Women's Amateur First Flight Consolation champion, district and regional champion for 3A, which is the highest level. That is correct. Yes. Named MVP for the season average of 74. All-County Girls Golfer of the Year. 2010 Raider Invitational third place. And in November signed to Cumberland University Bulldogs on a golf scholarship. Katie, we're very proud of you. I know your parents are here tonight. I know your grandparents. They're very proud of you. And Sumner County is proud of you. And from the Sumner County School Board and a residents of Portland, we're very proud of you and all you've accomplished.
Thank you.
And this is Dr. Phillips's first one of these to sign. And I believe he plays golf. And this says, Certificate of Appreciation presented by the Sumner County Board of Education to Katie Legg on this day of June 21 in recognition of outstanding athletic achievement in golf. Again, we're very proud of you.
Katie, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Well, I'm not really prepared, but all I can say is hard work pays off. And also, I really appreciate you having me come. It really means a lot, and thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
And Mr. Gregory, thank you for starting that out about her academic success as well as her athletic success. So, my daughter played golf. She wasn't quite up to par. I couldn't avoid saying that. Next up, Loretta Abel. Miss Abel, if you would please come to the podium. If you would give us your name and your address for the record.
My name's Loretta Abel. I live at 301 Drivers Lane. I'm here to speak tonight on the subject of out-of-zone waiver requests. I'm a new parent in Sumner County, but a long-time Sumner County resident. My husband and I are in the process of adopting 2 elementary school children, and we are requesting that they attend a school out of our zone. We are zoned for Venus Stewart Elementary School, and we're requesting that they attend Guild. We've had approval to do that in the coming school year, and I heard some concerns that in the future those waivers would not even be allowed to be requested. And so I'm here tonight on behalf of my family and other families in our circumstances to allow us to at least make that request to our zoned principals, and with their blessing, then seek out our preferred school and of course leave it up to the principal of the receiving school, but to at least leave that open to families to have that option with respect to the student body of the receiving school. And I understand there's limited seats, but at least give us that option. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Abel. I will share with you that there have been no formal discussions at all about abolishing that policy. There have been some recommended changes. Dr. Phillips is reviewing that policy, and he's going to bring his suggestions back to the board, and I'm sure he'll keep your consideration in mind when he does so.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, that concludes recognition of delegation. Next item on our agenda is unfinished business. Jeremy, you're going to have to help me out here. Item A, consideration of revision to policy JHA fundraising activities. This is on second reading, but we should be referring to the one in what you handed out versus the one that was in our
Yes,
published
referring to the one and what we handed out. What is italicized is what's been changed. The only real difference is we've changed some of the references in there, and then we spelled out exactly how many fundraisers you can have.
All right. Can I get a motion? Motion by Mr. Duncan. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Silkwood. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Show that passes. Next is item B, consideration of policy IFCA, enrollment of foreign students upon second reading, on page 168 in your packet. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Wise. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Brewer. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll show that passes. Next, item C, consideration of policy FG, guidelines for project completion upon second reading. Where are we at? 248, page 248. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Gregory. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Daniels. Any discussion? Ladies and gentlemen, I'll just tell you, this is the procedure under which we've been operating for about 2 years. We just are putting it now in the form of a policy. All right, seeing no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? We'll show that passes. Item D, and I'm not sure I covered that when we adopted the agenda. We're actually removing GCO at the suggestion of our attorney, but we're going to be taking up the replacement as item K under new business, GCA. So we're going to skip over item D at the recommendation of our attorney, and we will take that particular item up under item K. All right, new business. Item A, discussion and or action on district budgets for school year 2011-12. Ms. Dursky.
Okay. You have in your boxes in front of you this evening, draft number 2 of the general purpose budget. There are some additional changes that need to be made to this document that came to my attention late this afternoon, so there'll be a draft 3 in short order. This budget is still out of balance. It's roughly $11.5 million short right now to be considered balanced with our revenue. And I spoke with Dr. Phillips this morning. We bring you the budget this evening and bring this to your attention. And I guess what we're looking for is some direction. Do we proceed with a budget that is not balanced to the commission, or do we try and balance it and perhaps present a list of requests that we would like added to the budget and the funding amount that we would need from the county commission? There's 2 options. We're just looking for direction.
All right. I see Dr. Phillips. Looks like he's wanting to speak. Dr. Phillips.
Ms. Dursky and I did talk about that this morning, and obviously it's been my practice in the past to always present a balanced budget to the taxing authority. Here I know we had a conversation that the process has been that we have that discussion with you all and then get some ideas and then place those along with ideas for making that budget balance at the district level, and then come to some resolution about what we're going to be able to do to balance the budget. So to follow up with Ms. Dursky's comments, that's what our intentions were.
Thank you. Any other board members? Mr. Wise?
How'd you know? I'm not sold on presenting a balanced budget. I think that we need to send a budget of needs to our funding body. If we don't, we leave them to guess it. We've not done that in the last 3 years, and we've gotten a balanced budget. Still got a penny out of every dollar taken away. If we don't send that message, and I'm not talking about in an uncooperative tone, but I feel like we are educating 500 on the average more children per year for the last 4 years, Ms. Dursky, I think is right. With the same local funding. That 2 and 2 don't add up to 4. Sometime, at some point, it's gonna catch up with us. And I think it has. So I would certainly favor a budget of needs. Yes, it's gonna be cut, but it may not be butchered. My point.
All right, thank you. Ms. Silkwood, you have something?
Yes, I'd just like to say that I do agree that we need to try to work toward a balanced budget. Excuse me, but at the same time, per our discussion at the last study session, and I'm not sure if this is an appropriate time or not, but I would like to make a motion to to increase the instructional allocation to increase it by $40 to up to $75 per student with this budget.
All right, I have a motion. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Brewer. Is there any discussion on that? Mr. Wise?
From 40 to 75.
If you'll remember back at our study session, we had a detailed discussion and went over this spreadsheet. Right now, the instructional allocation is $10 per student. When you factor in the free and reduced lunch students and average that out, it's more around $35 per student. I'm asking to increase it by $40, excuse me.
Anyone else on the motion to amend Mr. Gregory?
Did you put that in the form of motion?
I did.
I'll second that.
Well, we've already got a second, but now we have a second on the second. That's all right. Ms. Dursky?
May I ask a question? Would that also be then accompanied by a reduction in the approved fees that the board recently approved?
Yes.
Okay.
So in essence, what we're saying is we're going to increase the per student allocation with a identical amount reduction in the fees that everyone pays for their free education when they enroll. Any other discussion? Mr. Duncan, do you have something? Okay. Anyone else? All right. Seeing no further discussion on the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll show that passes. Any other discussion? Mr. Duncan, do you have something on the budget?
Yes. For the last several years, all of those needs that we have been liking to run the school system, we have not put those things in our budget. And if we don't, I think this is the time now that we just need to put what we need in this system to run this school system, textbooks, whatever we need, classroom, all those things, we need to put them in our budget, send them over there. If they want to ask it, let them ask it, because it's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to educate these children and see that these needs are fulfilled. So that's my opinion about it.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Anyone else? Ms. Silkwood?
Mr. Duncan, I just want to thank you for saying that again. We discussed that this is study session, but by approving these fees, we're essentially working toward relieving the burden of providing necessities right now that parents are currently paying. When you go to register your students for school, you're paying anywhere from $5 to $100 per class in high school, and you all have seen the fees for middle and elementary school as well. So this is a step toward alleviating those fees for our free education here in the state of Tennessee. Thank you.
Mr. Wise?
I'd like to get the director's comments on your experience concerning school fees, subject fees, classroom fees, whatever you might call them. Can you share that?
Sure, I'd be glad to. When I saw the list of fees for our system, and I've shared this with Ms. Silkwood, I was a little bit stunned. I've never really seen that long of a list. There were some things that in my past experience we charged for, such as lab fees for higher level science courses, some athletic things, driver's ed, some other pass-through fees, but it was fairly exhaustive, and I told Ms. Silkwood that I thought that was something that needed to be addressed. You know, it goes back to what's reasonable, and I think right now we're a little bit out of balance with what we're charging parents to take courses that should be part of our duty to educate them. Thank you.
Mr. Gregory?
Yes, I read a very interesting article a few weeks ago, and the entire article summarized was this: within 10 years, which those students are all, remember, they're already enrolled in our public schools, that after graduation, 85% of them will need at least an associate degree to get a job in the state of Tennessee. We must educate students. That's our responsibility. We must educate them, and I'm more than willing to send our budget, because 15 years from now, then it's going to look like we did not do our job.
Dr. Phillips, you have something else?
I did want to just add this as part of a conversation that Ms. Dursky and I had about the budget. We did discuss that a strategy might be to work within our system to bring you as close to a balanced budget as we feel like we can, but then to make part of the minutes a list of priorities that are needs that we think need addressed, and then submit those at the same time. Maybe that's a good way to handle that.
Mr. Daniels?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope I'm not jumping over agenda items, but when looking at the budget and looking at our organizational chart that I think we had an opportunity to review earlier today, my question concerns some of the action that was taken by the County Commission last night and oversight of the financial budget from a school board perspective. In the budget, do we have any allocation for an individual to oversee the budget or money from our side of the house versus just trusting the County Commission to provide accurate reporting on that information? And if not, do we need to consider adding a position to the org chart and adding a position and funds to create that position to the budget? If so, I have no problem making a motion that we add that position.
Let me see if I can address that, and I may need a little bit of help from Ms. Dursky, but we received an email today, each of you, from David Lawing. I requested of him last night following the County Commission meeting that he give us some clear direction on July 1st where our finance department employees were to report to work and from whose budget would they be paid. He made it very clear that they are still school system employees. As such, they approved a continuation budget last night. So we're still operating with the same money to pay those same individuals. I think at some point we may need to have that discussion. I'm not sure if we're quite there yet. You know, Ms. Dursky and her staff will be here, I hope. They'll all be here to continue to guide us. We've got to get through this budget season and that sort of thing, but we certainly will keep that in consideration because that is a concern, obviously. We will have to have some assistance here in our own house. So, any other discussions on the budget in general? Mr. Wise?
Oh, I had requested, and hopefully at some point we will have just a special session on the budget. We did this 3 years ago, I guess, and it was extremely helpful. And I think, Ms. Dursky, I think that you had the budget somewhat color-coded, which may be of help. Different elements of the budget equating to the color code. So I still would like to have that session, and hopefully that will help me, and I know it will help newer board members, because it certainly did help me when I was a new board member. So if we can do that maybe sometime in July, if that's possible, that would be good. Thank you.
Mr. Wise, we likely will be having some budget workshops. Mr. Gregory?
Yes, and I've planned on having a compensation committee meeting soon, and we'll bring some new information from that meeting to the budget too.
Thank you. Anyone else on the budget itself? Ms. Dursky has asked for some guidance. We've heard from Dr. Phillips. I don't know that that's necessarily an actionable item, if we can at least just give her some indication of where we need to go. Let me say this. This will be entering, Ms. Dursky, help me, the 4th year. If there were no pay raises offered this year, would this be year 4 or year?
This is our 3rd year at the same salary, so next year would be the 4th year.
Next year would be the 4th year that our employees will have worked for the same pay. As we've talked about before, in that amount of time, we've not given pay raises. County Commission has met their legal obligation of maintenance of effort, meaning they've given us the same amount of local dollars as they have for the last several years. And in that amount of time, we have opened 4 brand new schools. We have added 2 or renovated 10 schools. We have grown by approximately 2,000 students. Would that be safe, Ms. Wheeler? Approximately 2,000 students at the same level of commitment. And at some point, that is difficult to sustain. Much like your house, if you just neglect your maintenance and you let it go and you let it go and you let it go, rather than taking small bites out of it at a time, all of a sudden it almost becomes overwhelming, and you wind up seeing something that shocks you, like an $11 million out-of-balance budget. We do have needs, and we do have to continue operating the school system. You know, I think we need to continue. This is fairly routine for us to look at the needs of the school district, and then we start making decisions in what areas we feel like need to be cut. Mr. Wise, that's something we certainly can talk about in detail through a budget workshop. And, you know, I think we should try and work toward that. But if we're able to get there or not, I'm not sure at this point, because just the raises alone, we've all seen that county general employees have taken the first step toward a 3% pay raise for this year. We have cooperated with the county commission for the last several years. In the years when they said that they wouldn't give a raise, we didn't give a raise. When the county commission suggested that we change the percentage of insurance that we pay from 85% to 80%, again, we cooperated with the county commission. And I feel like we should continue that cooperation. They've indicated a need or a desire to give a 3% pay raise, and I think we should continue cooperating by also giving a 3% pay raise. And I certainly have no problem with doing that. I got 2 calls yesterday. Some employees that were confused somewhat. They had heard that the county commission had rejected a pay increase request, and I assured them that they haven't taken that up yet. So, you know, we do have some challenges in front of us. Ms. Dursky, as usual, continue to use her magic computer and let it do its thing. You know, we've got some work cut out for us. We are going to need to have a time when we do sit down to discuss nothing but this budget. So, Ms. Wheeler, do you have something?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I did want to mention, so much appreciate Ms. Silkwood's approach to instructional allocations, and did just want to mention to the board, if I may, that typically when we look at instructional allocations, we also look at library allocations and guidance allocations because they are likewise per student allocations. So as you're wrestling with those issues related to per student expenditures, I would ask that you all also consider guidance and library student allocation.
Thank you, Ms. Wheeler. Mr. Gregory?
I was before him.
Mr. Brown, I'd rather hear from you anyway.
I'll tell you everything he was gonna say. You know, first off, I'm always getting off on the wrong track, but we've got the best ever Board of Education. And, some things that we have done since we've been here, to me, when we built the new building over here, and we were supposed to build a building out here for about $12 million and buy the property out here. And we didn't do that. We spent about half measure, about $5.5 million. Well, that's about $6 million that we saved. Now, in my book, if you didn't spend it, then you saved it. And we've done so many things with all the new building projects we had that we've done. That is a savings that we have done for this county. And I'm in favor of sending a budget, instead of us playing this tennis ball match back and forth, which we will continue to do that thing forever. But I'd put in a true budget and add on our needs for the children of this county. Because are we not here for any other reason other than the children of this county and the teachers of this county that educate them? We're going to have to fund this thing. We're going to have to fund it. And you know how I feel about the taxation part of this thing needs to be set by the school board, and we need to join another 11, 12 states. But that's another thing that's way down the road in somebody else's memory. But, and the school board set the rate and everybody else follow suit. But we do need to put in that budget our needs, true needs. And we're not going to don't lie to those people. Don't fudge with this and this and this, but put a true needs in there and stick with the guns. Eventually, we'll get the message through to those people that we got to have A, B, or C.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Gregory?
But in reference to what Ms. Wheeler mentioned about the library, Mr. Erskine and I have had one or two conversations, I believe, in this area in the last week. And I'm open and to put this in our budget, very much so. But I'm also open for the amount. I'm not sure what is the amount that we usually allocate for the libraries. It's so like $7 per student per school, correct?
Yes, sir.
And again, I'm open to suggestions about should that be 10, 12?
I think we just need to look at that and talk about what we might propose. A good library book today costs $32 to $38 a piece. So I think we just have to look at what might be reasonable based on a percentage similar to what Ms. Silkwood suggested.
And I was speaking with a librarian in our county just less than a week ago, and she was trying to meet the state standards, and she did. And I'm proud of the fact of what she did as the librarian of that school through fundraisers and whatever to meet the standards. But she was also buying the paper-bound books rather than others, which will not last as long. But one other thing I would like to mention, the library, as we've called them for the last few minutes, they're really referred to as the media centers now in schools. And there's more technology involved, and I think that's another area that we need to look at because, again, we need to educate students.
I'm going to come to Mr. Brewer. He hasn't spoken yet on the budget, and then Mr. Wise, back to you. And do you have something to say?
I just want to go back to the 3% raise for the employees just for a second or two. Would it be proper to entertain a motion to have Ms. Dursky add that to the budget?
I think it's already in there.
Is it already in there? Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Thanks.
All right, Mr. Wise?
Well, I know this is not the appropriate time. However, because of the demonstration that we all just witnessed, I just want to point out I believe this is Ms. Wheeler's last official board meeting. But she is still in like Flynn. She is trying hard to get funding for instruction. She takes ownership. And I'm not gonna go further because I'm already getting chills, but I just want you to know, I really appreciate you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wise. Mr. Daniels?
I had a question. We approved the student allocation adjustments just a couple minutes ago. And this may be a question for Ms. Wheeler. Is there a set limit on what we recommend teachers request for supply fees and things like that? And the reason I'm asking is I'm trying to think back to last year. I've got 3 kids in the school system, and in about 5 years, I'll have 5 kids in the school system, so I may have to take out a second mortgage at some point.
Mr. Daniels, we need to have a talk.
Yeah, thank you. My question is, you know, when I look at how much, we paid last year in school fees and workbook fees and lab fees and, you know, the supply list the teacher provided, I probably spent $300, you know, per student. And the student allocation is going to help with some of that. But are there limits on the amount that teachers can request, or is there any guidance we provide? Because I could see, you know, I kind of have a fear that we may have some schools or teachers say, well, since this got lowered on what they're paying here, maybe I can make up for it by asking the parent to pay more on the back end. So.
They're consulting. Ms. Dursky?
We're consulting, we're consulting, I'm sorry. I would hope that by raising the allocation from here and lowering the fee, there'd be the same net amount of money going into each school to be used by each teacher. The division of that money would be a little bit different. If it's collected by a fee, it typically goes into that teacher's account within the school activity funds, or that subject area's account, and then is handled typically by the teacher or the department head. If it's an allocation, the principal has more control over that, and there'd need to be some good cooperation between the principal and the teachers. As far as those supplementary lists go, those are really at the school's discretion at this point, because they're not part of a reimbursable fee on our part. They're simply things that the teachers ask the children or the parents to provide. We can certainly stress at our principals meeting before school starts that these are requests. These are not required, and they're not demands, if that would help at all.
Well, you know, like I said, I was just curious. I didn't know if there's any guidance per grade level, because I bought more Lysol wipes in the last 5 years, and totes and things like that. And part of me wonders how they can fit that many totes in a classroom in the first place. But you know, I'm just trying to wonder if there's any guidance, if maybe we could look at developing lists, maybe not this year, but in the future, maybe working with the PTO committee to put some lists together so at least we have a little bit more consistency across grade level and across schools, so you don't have one teacher asking for $300 worth of supplies and another asking for, you know, 45 or 50.
Mrs. Silkwood?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Daniels, for bringing that up. If you'll remember back to the study session when we discussed this, and it kind of got glossed over a little bit with all the data that I presented, but part of what I presented during the study session was to come up with some guidelines for the usage of that instructional allocation, and I intend to add that to our next study session. And also, this would probably be a good time for me just to reiterate something else I said at the study session, which is I believe we need to work towards streamlining our processes and putting that money back into the classroom. Not to say we may not eventually need to ask for more money from the county commission, but I think that there's a lot of room for improvement here in terms of how we operate, and some cost savings that we need to put back in the classroom to helpfully cover that $75 per student instructional allocation. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn.
2 things real quick. First of all, about the budget, I am currently working on, and I'll try to have this ready by the next study session. I've done some research on our coaching supplements that we're paying out right now that are done on a percentage basis. And I'm working to come up with a plan where we can include our academic and our art teachers that are doing things extracurricular after school with our students, especially in the secondary level. So that will be something I'll try to have ready for the next study session for everyone to take a look at. My other question was, when we're talking about this allocation, I know we're saying $75 per student, but it is, I just want to make sure it's not going to be a problem that, because you know how in some grades it's higher than in other grades, just because it's 75 per student does not mean that that school is going to get that true 75. Do you see what I'm saying? Are we going to go back to the grade level to that actual where some of it is 65, some of it is 45? They're all 45?
Stursky.
Right, the fees that the board approved are 45 grades K through 8. The 65 used to be in effect when the parents were asked to help purchase those consumable math textbooks for grades K through 2, but we're providing those.
Okay.
So the fees are back to 45. One thing to look at is how are we going to do that at the high school level where they vary so widely course to course.
And I guess I just want to make sure that we're not, you know what I mean, if we need to think this through ahead of time. I don't want us to be stuck. If we were to get the monies, to be stuck with them in areas maybe where we need more here and less here.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. Ms. Silkwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Shannon, I think that's something we can also discuss in study session when we discuss the instructional allocation guidelines. So, thank you.
All right, anyone else on the budget? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Next item on our agenda is approval of the 2011-12 board meeting calendar. You'll notice that the handout Mr. Johnson passed out, there has been a change from what was in our packets that were distributed last week. Let's see, of note, we changed the July, what was in the packet of July 5th to a Monday, July the 11th. And then, Mr. Johnson, help me out.
What page, Mr.?
We're on page 172. We also changed from what was passed out in our packets, January the 10th.
No, January 10th.
No,
it
we
stayed
left
the same.
that one alone.
We discussed changing January 10th.
March the 27th, we changed to March the 20th.
Yeah, we originally had the March meeting moved because our spring break is the week before that, and so we were going to move the meeting just to give staff a little bit more time, but it'll probably work out just as easy just to get the agenda done ahead of time and send out to everybody, and by then we'll be doing our board agendas electronically, so it shouldn't be that big an issue. We moved the January 10th meeting because our original meeting would be scheduled on January 4th, or January 3rd. January 3rd, which is the day before kids come back to school. Staff would have been gone for winter break at that point, and so it's just easier on everybody to go ahead and do that on the 10th. As we did last year, we have done away with the December study session. We will just have a regular meeting on December 6th. We all discussed last year that with Christmas being such a busy time for everybody, that it's just easier to bump the meeting up and do away with the study session. One of the other issues that we wanted to talk about was the February 7th meeting. At this point, we've left it where it is, but that is a parent-teacher conference day, and so you may want to just plan accordingly if you plan on attending parent-teacher conferences, or we can move it if that's what your preference is.
Any discussion on this? Can I get a motion to approve the revised motion by, who was that? Who made that motion? Mr. Wise. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Duncan. All right, seeing no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. All right, we've adopted the calendar for next year. Next item on our agenda is item C, consideration of policy IFCB, field trips and excursions on first reading, page 173. Somebody help me remember what the change was.
This was added by Ms. Cox probably about 2 meetings ago. It's appeared.
I remember what this was.
Yeah, this is basically girls can't be in guys' rooms, guys can't be in girls' rooms. That's really the only change. The reason that it has not made a voting appearance yet was we held all our policies waiting on Dr. Phillips to arrive and look at them before we approved them. So he's here, he likes it. That's where we are.
Is there a
Certainly, I
motion?
concur that they should not stay in the same room.
See, I told you this guy's gonna take us to new heights. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Mr. Brewer. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Gregory. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll show that passes. Oops, let me get back to my agenda here. Next is item D. Consideration of policy GCE, Support Personnel Compensation Guide upon first reading. Can I get a motion? Motion by Mr. Brewer. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Wise. Discussion? Buquay?
The wording in this policy is identical, word for word, with what is currently in policy GCA at the bottom. Policy GCA, which is later on in your agenda, contained matters that were not compatible with Senate Bill 905, which passed this year. But it also had some matters, which are the ones in this policy, that didn't fit neatly in one policy. So all I did was take the wording out of current GCA that should stay and put it under a different descriptor number. So if you pass this tonight, you're not doing anything that's not already in your policy. I did clean up the citations a little bit because some of them were archaic, and I used current code sections and this sort of thing. But other than that, you're not doing anything new.
All right. Any discussion on this policy? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? So that's been adopted. Item E, we'll need to refer to the one contained in what Mr. Johnson handed out to us. This is policy consideration of a revision to policy CD, discrimination, harassment, bullying, and retaliation on first reading. Let's see if we can get a motion. Motion by Mr. Brewer. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Daniels. Mr. Johnson?
After this one in the packet, we actually, staff found some issues with it. The policy version that is in the packet had everything, whether it was bullying at a school level or whether it was bullying between employees, going straight to the Human Resources Office to Mr. Ott. That is not practical in situations where you've got, student on student. And so we revised some of the language in there to make it work a little bit better. This one has a time sensitivity issue because we're going to be doing the student handbook, and that has to be the printer by July 1. And so we need to get whatever the revision of the policy kind of in a format where we know what it is, where we can get it into the handbook.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this policy change? Mr. Daniels?
Just a question on the policy itself. Does it address the use of technology for bullying in any way?
That's actually the other change that we have made. Why this originally was placed on the agenda is state law has changed its definition of bullying to include cyberbullying, and so this policy does address that, yes.
Does that include student to teacher harassment using technology?
The state adopted a number of definitions of cyberbullying, rather extensive, and instead of copying them word for word out of the statute and putting them in here, where it says definitions, it used to say as contained in the policy. I just put as contained in the authorities and the policy, so it refers you back to the code section to get those definitions, but they're very encompassing, and I'm not so sure really that they would not have been included anyway. I mean, bullying is bullying, and that's just a different technique of bullying, but the legislature saw fit specifically to mention that, so we've referred to the statute that specifically mentions it.
All right, is there anyone else? Johnson?
Now, one thing we did want to request of the board, if you guys were comfortable with this, is that we would like to talk about either waiving second reading on this or coming up with a special call meeting or something so that we can get this adopted in time for us to get an accurate version into the handbook, because this is a very important policy for students to have in that handbook.
I think we are going to have a special called meeting prior to the end of June for some budgetary purposes. If need be, we could certainly add that to that special called agenda. Is there any other discussion? Mr. Gregory?
Just, Dr. Phillips, you feel comfortable with this?
We have read through this, but I'll have to admit that it's rather quickly. So I will feel more comfortable if we placed it where we could have an opportunity to review it before we go to second reading at the special meeting, if that's okay. We're trying to comply with state law. Has to be on by July 1, and we need to get handbooks printed. All of you understand the time frame that we're on. But I would like to be able to make sure that the administrative level reviews what's in this to make certain we're comfortable with it. So thank you for bringing that up.
All right, any further discussion? Mr. Gregory, did you have something else? No? All right, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll show that passes. Next item is, man, I'm going to have to start bringing glasses or sitting further away from this desk. Consideration, it's item F, consideration of policy IDFAC, interscholastic athletics upon first reading. It's on page 182. Board may recall this was an issue brought to us by Ms. Cox. She was unable to be here tonight. I don't know if anyone else wishes to speak to this. I will speak to it the best I can. You may know that TSSAA has passed a recommended policy of theirs, and it is left up to each school district to determine what they choose to do with regard to homeschooled students being allowed to play sports that are sanctioned by TSSAA in their zoned schools. Mr. Wise, did you have something?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess the first thing I need to ask Mr. Fuqua, I know you referred or used TSSAA ruling on a lot of the language in this policy. I don't see the need of including, and it tends to get a little confusing when private school is mentioned in here as well. Is there a way for you to kind of refine this to where it is applying simply to public school and just eliminate the language about private school?
I'll be glad to edit it. What I did here, because it was a rush, was just copy TSBA's form policy. So it's word for word identical to what TSSAA.
Right.
TSBA, Tennessee School Board Association, drafted this policy.
Oh, okay, so this was the school board's draft policy.
Yeah.
Mr. Johnson?
With one addition, Ms. Cox asked that the specifics of TSSAA policy be added in. So the numbers, the 1 through 10, is actually verbatim from TSSAA policy.
Okay, and then my next comment is item 3. For example, by August 15 of the school year, the parent or guardian must make application to the principal of the member school in which the homeschool athlete wishes to participate. Well, fall football practice starts right at the last Monday in July. So I think we need to, I don't think that's going to work. All of our high schools, with the exception of White House and possibly Westmoreland, are playing their first football game in what is now commonly referred to as week 0, which is August 19. That's something we'll have to iron out. I think this is such an issue that there are a lot of residuals from it that we're really going to have to put a lot of thought into this before we have final approval on something like this. I have explained my personal feelings to some who would be involved in this. And I think what we have to consider when we consider this policy is being fair to every student, be they a homeschool student or a public education student. We have to be fair to that person without being unfair to the publicly educated student. And I think that's where we're going to find ourselves in a tight spot if we approve allowing homeschool students to participate in athletics. First comes athletics, then comes drama, then comes band, then comes beta. What are we opening ourselves up to? Just have a lot of concerns, and most of my concerns fall under the word fairness. What's fair to everybody concerned? So that's my comment at this point.
All right, so no motion in there. All right, Mr. Brewer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll address Mr. Fuqua. Mr. Fuqua, is it my understanding that the state is coming up with their own legislation on this at some point in time?
It's been proposed. I think the last time that it was proposed was in 2010, and they reached a compromise with the School Board Association that if the sponsor wouldn't push it, that they would recommend to the school boards this sort of policy. And then they drafted the policy. I didn't realize the things had been added that were added because I just sent in the exact wording of TSBA's, form policy. But at any rate, it comes up repeatedly in the legislature, and it's never gotten anywhere yet, but that's not to say that it won't someday. I mean, it's just one of those perennials.
And if I can, I'll speak to that a little bit. It's speaking to some of the folks I try and stay in touch with down at the state legislature. They are trying to watch this year, see how many school districts do adopt or don't adopt, and then if there aren't a lot of schools that adopt policies, then it sounds to me like in the next legislative session that they're going to take this up. So I don't know if that answers your question, Mr. Brewer.
Well, it does. It enlightens me some. My personal feeling is I agree with Mr. Wise. We got to be fair about it, but I also look at that family that their tax dollars are coming here too, and so we got to find that balance there somewhere or another where we can't allow them or somehow or another. But I'm going back to the legislature. If they're going to adopt a law on this, their laws trump our policies. So we may want to just give this some time and see what they do, because whatever they do is going to trump what we do anyway. So I might just throw that out there.
All right, I'm hearing a lot of discussion, not a lot of motions. Mr. Wise?
Do you need a motion before we can continue discussion?
It would be nice if I had some type of a motion.
I'm not going to make a motion to approve it because I absolutely can't support it at this point, so.
Is that a
But
motion to
I
defer
would
it?
like comment. Well, then that stops discussion.
All right, you go ahead and have some comment, but at some point I do need to get a motion.
Okay. I got you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Gregory, let's let Mr. Wise finish up, and then I'll
Oh,
come
I'm
back
sorry, I
to you.
didn't realize, I thought you've been talking
Thank you,
10
Mr.
minutes.
I've been talking 10 minutes, but I haven't said anything yet. And I would agree with Mr. Brewer. When the state tells us to, then our hand is forced. Now, this is the way that I've explained it some today in talking about this with several different school people. Family A who chooses to homeschool. Family B who chooses to public education. Family A is a taxpayer by force. Family B is a taxpayer by force. Family A chooses to homeschool, family B chooses to public education. Yes, we're all taxpayers, but we're taxpayers by force. If we own property, we're gonna pay property taxes. If we buy stuff, we're gonna pay sales taxes. That's just a fact. That's a privilege of getting to live in this country. We also have choices that we make. When we make choices, there are consequences to those choices. And if we choose to homeschool, we must accept the consequences of homeschooling. If we publicly educate, we must accept the consequences of publicly educating. I don't know any simpler way to put it. I make a motion that we defer this to study session.
Second.
All right, I have a motion to defer discussion on this until the study session. We typically do not discuss motions to defer. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll show that that item has been deferred until the study session. All right. Next item on our agenda is item G, consideration of the annual asbestos report completion on page 186. Is this, hold on just a moment.
This is just
I
a
had a
pass-through where
Yeah, I had a question on this.
we're required every year to report it.
That's what I recall.
Mike Marshall is here if anybody has questions.
So this does not require board action. This is really just.
Well, it requires you to vote to acknowledge that you've seen it. Isn't that right, Mike?
Yeah, we have to send a report to the state every year. We've inspected, y'all seen it.
All right, I need a motion to acknowledge we've all turned our booklets to page 186. All right, Mr. Brown's made a motion. He turned his packet to 186, seconded by Mr. Brewer. You need to help him. He has trouble counting up above 100. All right. Any further discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right. Mr. Marshall, we have seen your report. Next item is item H, consideration of approval of a special course in freshman orientation for Beach High School on page 187. Motion by Mr. Wise, second by Mr.
Well,
Duncan.
before we get too far down the road on this, Ms. Wheeler just pointed out to me that there were actually two stuck in there together. There's a second special course in there from Portland High School, and it's early childhood education career. It's page 190.
We'll take those separately if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine.
We have a motion and a second on the class at Beach, or orientation at Beach. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ms. Wheeler?
Mr. Chairman, they're both Beach High School.
Oh, they're both Beach High School?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's take up the second one then. Jeremy doesn't know the difference between Beach and Portland. There's a lot of things I could say. There's a motion by Mr. Wise on the second by Mr. Duncan. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Next, item I, consideration of two amendments to the 2010-11 general purpose budget on page 191. Ms. Dursky?
These are two, what I call housekeeping budget amendments, just trying to clean up some lines that are slightly overdrawn at this point, or will be by the end of the year. And in order to avoid audit findings, we're moving money within the category from one line to another to clean these up. There's actually two general purpose and one federal projects at this point in the agenda.
All right, if we can, I need a motion. Motion by Mr. Brewer, second by Mr. Gregory. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? We'll show that's passed. And then let's also do the federal.
Yeah, this federal projects amendment moves approximately $8,000 from instructional support category for other supplies and materials into a direct instruction category for classroom materials for students.
Motion
Part of-
approved.
most
Motion
of
by
the time.
Mr. Gregory, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Brown, any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right, next, item J, consideration of creation of a chief administrative officer position. And if you'll look in the packet handed out to us at the beginning of the meeting. Well, let me find it here. It's, follows all the bullying. Where's that? Back here in the back. All right, looks like it's toward the back there. Job title, Chief Administrative Officer. And we will, what we'll need to do, if the board approves this, we'll also need to revise our organizational chart. This is something that has been requested by the Director of Schools. Dr. Phillips, would you like to kind of explain your rationale on this?
I sure would. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you all know, entering the system, we had some job positions at the administrative level that we were trying to fill, obviously taking care of the principalships first, and then moving to the administrative level that work and directly report to me. Trying to do this with as little trauma to the system as possible. I'm a big believer in getting into the system, spending some time and making sure that I understand all of the talents of the people that we have internally throughout that first year. I do propose this position. I've included the job description. As most administrative positions at this level that directly report to me, it says basically that they'll be doing some specific things, but also they'll have some broad-ranging job duties that will work with me every day, much like our senior level administrators. As we move through this first year and we start to discuss things that I know I mentioned in my interview, like strategic planning across our system, some really innovative ideas that we can bring back to you all to implement in our system in the future, technology plans that deal with how we're going to structure a technology integration in the classroom to impact teaching and learning. It certainly will require someone that has this type of skill set, someone that I can assign those duties to. They have experience doing those things and can help move us forward. So I would ask that you allow me to do this.
All right, thank you, Dr. Phillips. Is there a motion?
Motion approved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Wise and a second by Mr. Gregory. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right, well, show that's been adopted. Now we must formally revise our organizational chart. You'll see it's the identical org chart we currently have, with the exception of that position has been added. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Brewer, a second. Second by Mr. Wise. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll show we've revised the org chart. Next item on our agenda is item K, consideration of policy GCA, support personnel upon first reading. And I will again remind you, board, to look at the packet Mr. Johnson handed out at the beginning of the meeting. And let me find that. Mr. Fuqua, if you could highlight this for us.
The Senate Bill 905 changed the classified employees from contract employees to at-will employees and created sort of a still an at-will but slightly hybridized version for licensed non-tenured employees. The statute speaks for itself. What this does is says essentially in 2 or 3 lines that we have to follow the statute, and says that the statute will be attached to this policy for the substance. And it's not optional, it's mandatory, and it takes effect the 1st of July. And it's a considerable difference in the way of doing business. Policy GCA, GCE, and GCG are profoundly modified by this. Essentially, GCE and GCG are just abolished. I don't remember exactly what they pertain to, but essentially it was the property right or contract right people had in their jobs, and when you go to at-will, those things are gone. So, and as you know, from struggling with our current version of the code that's all in paper and difficult to search, we may find other policies in the future where the caption doesn't exactly explain everything in the policy that this law also would affect. These are the ones that I found, but I wouldn't be the least bit shocked to find another one tomorrow poking around in the code, because so often the caption says one thing and then you get into the policy and there are 3 or 4 things. So, but bottom line is, those employees are going to at-will. The ones who are licensed, and that would be any sort of a license, as I read the statute, not just a teacher's license, but a nurse's license or a CPA or whatever license, has certain rights under this statute that go beyond a typical at-will situation. But they're minimal compared to what exists today, or before this takes effect.
All right. Can't recall, Mr. Fuqua, that was a fairly long explanation. Did we get a motion on this? Johnson, do you have a motion? All right, I'm going to need a motion. Motion by Mr. Duncan. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Silkwood. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll show that's passed on first reading. Next is item L, consideration of 11 amendments to the 2010-11 general purpose budget. And again, I will direct your attention to the handout provided by Ms. Dursky, or by Mr. Johnson at the beginning. Ms. Dursky, if you would care to explain this to us.
These are additional cleanup amendments that I'm asking you to approve this evening, just to get the budget in line with the requirements for end of the year audit.
All right, is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Duncan. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Brown. Any discussion? Mr. Wise?
I have a question, and I am not doing this to be uncooperative again. I don't know why I say that before I make a comment, but I guess it's a safety thing. Is the invoice for the director applicants personality testing a part of these?
No, sir, it's not.
Okay. Are we going to address that invoice?
Well, I can do that, Mr. Wise. Executive Committee, as you know, when we agreed to test all of the finalists, we originally had set that limit at $600, which was enough to cover 3. We actually interviewed 5 finalists, so there's an additional $400 that will need to be paid. Executive Committee has approved that, but it will be placed on our next agenda.
Okay. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, Mr. Chairman, if that's permissible. In looking back at my notes on March 29, we did, by a 9-0 vote, set the limit at $600. There was nothing in that discussion about how many would be interviewed. It was simply a limit of $600. Now, I'm not going to make a big deal out of $400 additional dollars. I'm not going to do that. It's silly to do it. I would request, however, that if the executive committee or whomever is going to take action that is beyond or out of bounds of what the board has agreed to do by an official vote of the board, that the board be notified. That's all. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. I appreciate those comments. Really, we just had an outstanding invoice because of the small amount, and we did have money in the professional services. But in my discussion with Ms. Dursky, I did want that on an agenda so the board would be aware of it, and we could have discussion on that. Dr. Phillips, do you have something?
I do. I was just proud to see that you tested other people than just the guy from Mississippi, so I was proud to see that. I was just glad to see that there was more than one.
From what I understand, the other 4 passed.
Probably true.
All right. Mr. Wise, do you have anything else? No? All right. Any further discussion on this? All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right. Next, item M, consideration of 3 amendments to the 2010-11 federal projects budget. Again, Ms. Dursky, and I will direct your attention to the handout. Ms. Dursky.
This again is, these are just cleanup amendments at the end of the year. No new funds, just transfers within category.
Motion by Mr. Wise. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Duncan. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Next was the item we moved off consent agenda, item N. Ms. Dursky, have you managed to track down the,
It's my understanding that the heated mirrors were not included as part of the base bid. It's also my understanding that they're about $100 apiece. And it may be that Mr. Barnes had some reason for not including them. We probably may need to run that by him, but they're not included in these bids at any rate. Certainly they could be added on.
all right. Ms. Dunn, I think that was a question that you were asking. Am I understanding you to say that we could go back after the fact and add?
I believe if we wanted to add a $100 mirror to the $100,000 bus, we'd probably be okay.
Yeah.
It's not gonna affect the bids.
How many buses do we have?
28.
28, so we're talking about $2,800.
28 mirrors.
Yeah.
I believe there's some urgency to approve these bids as well. We need to get these to the county commission and secure funding.
Is that $100 per mirror?
Mm-hmm.
So we got 28 buses, so
Oh.
we'd actually double that amount.
56.
$5,600. And we're buying
2.6 million.
2.6 million, okay. All right. Mr. Wise? No? You just looked poised and ready.
Oh,
I'll need a motion. We've got to approve the bids, but we can amend that to add the heated mirrors. If somebody could speak to that, I think we may actually have a bus driver in the room. Is that correct? Sir, if you'd like to come up, we need an expert, and it's not me. If you would, hit that silver button in the base of that microphone, and perhaps you can help enlighten us to.
I'm Tim Oakley. I drive bus 490. The heated mirrors, I think, are a necessity. If you get up early in the mornings, get on a school bus, your mirrors are all frosted up. You can't get them all scratched off and cleaned off without messing the mirror up and messing the adjustments up. I think they wanted to quit getting them because if bus drivers are tearing them off and it costs a lot to replace them, $200 or $300 each or something is the reason I think Clint wants to get rid of them. But it's really, I think, a necessity. It's a real help to be able to get on a bus and all of your mirrors are cleaned off. If you drove a bus that doesn't have it, you can't clean the moon mirrors real good with ice scrapers and stuff. And it's just, it makes it a whole lot nicer having a bus with the defrosted mirrors.
And I would suspect that's also a safety thing when you're pulling out.
I think so.
Thank you. Thank you not only for your expertise, but also thank you for what you do for our school system. Mr. Wise, did you have something?
I will make a motion.
All right. Well,
Let me amend it before you second.
yeah, so,
I make a motion that we approve the bid for the buses and include 2 heated mirrors per bus.
all right, I have a motion by Mr. Wise and a second by Ms. Dunn. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll show that's been approved.
Mr. Chairman, may I interject
Ms.
a
Durst.
question? I'm sorry. There is some urgency, as I said, to get these bids to the county commission for funding for next year. The Education Committee has decided not to meet in July because their meeting would fall on the 4th. And I wonder if this board would be willing to ask them to have a meeting at some other date early in July prior to the Budget Committee so that we can get on the July cycle with this request.
Can I get a
Waiting
motion
till
from the
August is
board?
not gonna work.
Motion by Mr. Brewer. Is there a second by Mr. Gregory? Any discussion on requesting that? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ms. Dursky, you have a unanimous request. All right. Item O, discussion of study session items. I know we've deferred the homeschool athletic. What else do we have? Ms. Silkwood, did you have something?
Yes, I'd like to add guidelines for the usage of the instructional allocation.
Ms. Johnson, do you have that?
And also, I'd like to discuss the inclement weather policy and also a discussion regarding the number of AP courses that we have in the district. Thank you.
Do you have all that, Mr. Johnson? All right. Anyone else? Ms. Dunn?
I will have a report ready by the next study session with some ideas for a supplemental salary for our secondary teachers.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. Mr. Johnson, did you get that? Anyone else? Items for the study session?
I do.
Mr. Gregory?
I will have Mr. Ronnie Carter will be here to discuss several things referring to TSSAA.
Thank you. We already had that item on there, and so we'll let you coordinate getting him up here and meeting time and that sort of thing. Any other items for the study session? Mr. Johnson, do you have anything from staff? Y'all don't have to strain to think of anything. We
I
don't
don't
have to add to the agenda. I mean, it's fine
At
right
this,
where it
at
is.
this very moment, we don't, but we'll put it out if we have something.
All right. All right, seeing nothing else, we'll move on. Next item on our agenda, matters involving council. Mr. Fuqua, do we have anything?
Just one little comment, and I think I sent out an email that probably covered this, but I can't remember for sure. A couple of weeks ago, we were sued. We had very little notice. Ms. Dam and I got an email notice that somebody was going to appear the next morning at 9 o'clock for an injunction against the board, and she and I and several other people went over there, and sure enough, they filed a lawsuit. We tried it right then, and it was over in 2 hours, and we won. So there are other loose ends about it, but we can't go into those tonight, really.
Congratulations, I suppose. Huh? Oh, well, then in that case, thank you. All right. Is that it, Mr. Fuqua? Nothing else? All right. Next, committee reports. First up is Facilities Committee. In his absence, Mr. Hale has asked that I read off items that have been approved by the Facilities and Maintenance Committee that require board action. You'll see in your minutes of the Facilities Committee, there were several items on there, but these are the ones that do require board action. First item up was a request from White House High School to install HVAC units in the auto shop area of the building. These units have already been purchased. They were not aware they had to have board approval, but it will be a class project, and that passed the Facilities Committee unanimously. I'll need a motion to approve that. Motion by Mr. Brewer. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Gregory. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? We'll show that passes. Next was an item from Hendersonville High School to purchase and install new outfield fencing at Drakes Creek Park baseball field where the Hendersonville High School plays baseball. Funds for this project are part of a grant from the Major League Baseball and Major League Baseball Players Association. Following our standard protocol, the funds are to be deposited with Ms. Dursky. That motion passed unanimously out of Facilities and Maintenance, and I will need a motion. Motion by Mr. Brewer. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Daniels. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? So that passes. Next was discussion and or action on bids for new playground equipment at Jack Anderson Elementary, Walton Ferry Elementary, and Station Camp. Those were broken in two. Station Camp Elementary a bid from School Sales and Services Incorporated in the amount of $26,263.75. This will be funded by the PTO. Again, following our protocol, funds will be deposited with Ms. Dursky for payment. We'll monitor the project. Can I get a motion? Have a motion by Mr. Wise, a second by Mr. Brewer. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Next was playground equipment for Jack Anderson Elementary and Walton Ferry Elementary. Again, low bid was from School Sales and Service, Inc. In the amount of $24,419. That's a total for both schools. Funding will come from the PTOs. That passed unanimously out of Facilities and Maintenance as a recommendation. Can I get a motion? Motion by Mr. Brewer. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Silkwood. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? We'll show that passes. Next was a request from Union STEM School to build and install a pavilion at the back of the school near the playground. It's a 20 by 20 metal roof pavilion. PTO will fund this in the amount of $5,900. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Daniels, second by Mr. or Miss, Mr. Second by Mr. Wise. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? We'll show that passes. And then the last item was a energy project from Vioxx. You may recall, some of you that had attended the Facilities and Maintenance Committee. This is where they did an energy audit on our actual energy usage and have come up with recommended upgrades. Now, part of this process is going to require some commission approval because it does require us to borrow $5 million through a program with the state of Tennessee. The projects were submitted to the state. They have been approved. It is money at 0.75% interest. It's a guaranteed savings program through Vioxx. If you'll look in your materials, we have they are guaranteeing a reduction in our energy cost in an amount sufficient to cover this. And this was passed by Facilities and Maintenance, and I will also, again, this will need commission approval, but I'm going to need a motion here. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Gregory. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Dunn. Any discussion? Mr. Wise?
I'd like to make a motion to defer to the study session because, quite frankly, borrowing $5 million really concerns me. I just simply ask for more time to delve into this because borrowing $5 million concerns me.
Well, I understand that. I think we may have a deadline on submitting that loan application. Is that right, Mr. Connett? What is that deadline? If you would come up to the podium. Please introduce yourself and what company you represent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Bill Kennett with Vioxx Services. We have been working with Townsend Engineering and the Energy Efficient Schools Initiative through part of this process. There is the urgency of time is the fact that there's only a certain amount of money that's available in this loan fund. When you find, first of all, finding funds like this is almost unheard of. The state of Tennessee just has a fantastic program. We happened to get qualified for the last $5 million that's in that fund. So that is the timing initiative that's on this. So to gain approval and gain acceptance through EESI for the loan funds, that's the timing urgency.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Wise.
May I ask the gentleman a question?
You may.
Thank you, sir. What's the guarantee? Can you talk about the guarantee?
Yes, sir. Actually, this project will have positive cash flow from day one. So what will happen, it's just like a construction loan. So we'll go through, we'll design the implementations that will be done. And from day one, when we start the implementations, it'll have positive cash flow. So the school system, instead of paying all the utility, or all the money to the utility companies, you'll be keeping that money in your pocket during the construction period.
Does this mean because it is energy savings, and I'm gonna get down to classroom, does this mean that in December, the heat's gonna be cut off at 1 o'clock in the afternoon?
No, sir.
Okay.
And
Does it mean that in summer basketball practice, the gymnasiums will not have air conditioning because we're trying to save energy?
no, sir. And I can explain that very quickly. There's been so many technology advancements in, lighting technology, HVAC technology. What we're simply doing is putting more and better tools in the hands of the facilities department so that they can manage the facilities better. We're going to be reducing wasted energy and then including and improving technology to make things better.
Okay, would you address one more time the guarantee? Now, I just heard it verbally. Will that guarantee be in writing?
Yes, sir, sure is.
And that writing is in your packet,
Okay,
Mr. Wise.
like I said, I hadn't had a chance to, even if we send it to a study session and we're 30 days, 45 days from now, even if we approved it tonight and checked it tomorrow, that last $5 million may be gone, correct? If I heard you correctly.
Yeah, that's the urgency of the situation, is that there's limited funds there. Right now, the school is locked in, you're approved for that $5 million fund. How long that will be there, we're not sure.
May I ask Mr. Williams, Mr. Chairman, to come to the podium and let me ask him some questions?
Certainly, Mr. Williams.
And I don't want to throw him under the bus with heated mirrors.
And I will say this while he's coming up, Mr. Wise, as they did their audit, part of the tools that they used to do that were the smart meters that we had installed through the Internoc program, which provided then some real-time data. And when you do that, you start noticing some things like where perhaps we were turning on lights and things a little earlier than we needed to, or maybe a little later than we should have been turning them back off, and things like that with the advancement of some of the technologies he mentioned. And then they are also a non-vendor based company, meaning if there are recommended improvements that need to be made, that would be put out to bid for any brand, if you will, or vendor to submit, and it would be bid just like any other item that would come back to this board for approval before those projects proceeded. Go ahead with Mr. Williams if you can.
Okay, I appreciate that. I just don't want the sense of urgency to force us into making an uneducated decision that we suffer the consequences of 18 months from now. Mr. Williams, I have a lot of trust and confidence in you.
Thank you.
Do you, now, Mr. Brown, do you feel good about this? Is this something that, and here again, I don't want to throw you under the bus. However, I want somebody from our team to tell me this is a good thing to do, or not a good thing to do.
Well, I had a couple of questions when I looked at it. And one of them is it looks like some things overlap with the Internoc contract that we have in place. Am I going down the right path?
Are you asking if they're in conflict?
No, it looks like there's some redundancy.
Well, I'll let Mr. Connett speak to that. I actually spoke with Guy Looney, but I'd like to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, and actually, the Facilities Committee has seen my presentation, and a big part of that was the Internoc. And we are all in favor of the Internoc. In fact, we ask that you keep adding those meters. What we will be doing is taking that information and then adding on to it. So the Internoc meter takes the whole meter into consideration. what we'll be doing is adding sub-metering down below that as well. So, we'll be adding on to enhancing that system, and we certainly encourage you, the more you can take advantage of that Internoc system, it's extremely valuable data for us, for the school district, and, we certainly endorse that program.
And to refresh everyone's memory, that Internoc program we're referring to, Internoc is a company that is a vendor, if you will, for TVA, to promote a program where it's an energy reduction on demand for up to 40 hours out of a 365-day year. And if they make a request and we choose to reduce our energy usage, then they will compensate us for that. And Ms. Dursky, I know you sent out an email where we've already shown some positives out of that. And then if you recall, the thing that the Facilities Committee liked best out of that Internoc program, and we just approved a couple of meetings ago, I believe, we now have those meters in 26 of our schools, is just the data. And that data is what really becomes valuable to make things like we're discussing here work, because that's what provides you the data to see where those reductions and when those reductions can and are needed. Mr. Wise, do you have something else?
Yeah, I guess what I'll do is, I'm
If
sorry.
I could,
Go ahead, Tim.
Mr. Williams?
The other thing that I saw was the lighting upgrades, which our maintenance department has been doing for about 6 or 8 months now. And I don't know the exact number of the gymnasiums, but there's been several that our maintenance guys have already upgraded.
And I think you took that into consideration, and that is not included in any of your recommendations, is that right?
Yes, sir, that's right. And in fact, we even acknowledged the fact that that lighting will be installed. And so when the district installs that lighting, we will make an adjustment to the baseline so that the school district gets credit for that lighting. Because what they do is it's going to reduce the utility spend, and we actually give the school credit for that.
Hey, Justin, Mr. Wise, I will direct your attention to page 203, which is a summary of the program itself and what they will be doing. But if you'll look, you'll see a loan payment of $36.3 and a guaranteed energy savings of $59.5. So it's a net positive cash flow of $23.2.
Mr. Chair.
Thing to consider, when you work with monies like this, it's already budgeted money. This is money that's already going to the utility company. So month after month, you're spending this money. What we're doing is, instead of giving all that money to the utility companies, we're using it to put better technology in, and with the case of this loan, putting extra money in the district's pocket as well each month.
And so if I recall from your presentation to the Facilities Committee, that net positive cash flow of $23,000 per month is money that we can then use, rather than send it to the utility company, we can use to, whatever, buy heated mirrors or
exactly.
buy textbooks, whatever we choose to do. Mr. Gregory, did you have something?
I was just going to mention that Mr. Marshall's in the audience, and I know he's been involved in this program. I don't have any questions for him, but if any of you have any questions, or if he has any thoughts that he needs to share with us before we vote, do you, or do any of you have questions for him?
Mr. Marshall, you have any concerns or comments? Right, and that grant that you got, it's actually through the same program, which is the Energy Efficient Schools Initiative. And this is, you'd gotten grant money, this is loan money. I will say that there was, if I recall correctly, when you first presented this, there was 12 million, and then one district took 2, leaving 5 million. Williamson County took 5 million of it, left 5, and because of what the school or facilities committee did, that earmarked that last 5 million, and they're waiting to hear from us on, and that application is not, we can't commit to this until this is approved by the commission. That's part of their program. So our funding source has to approve it prior to that money being provided to us at 0.75%. Mr. Wise?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just not comfortable. I've got to look at this thing through my eyes. I can't look at it through anybody else's eyes. I've got to make my decisions based on what I feel like is best for this system. And I just cannot, I'm not comfortable supporting committing this school system to borrowing $5 million. So here again, I'm gonna make a motion that we defer this to a study session.
All right, I have a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
Shall I make another?
Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
True statement.
You had your light on before we get the second.
Yes. You know, for the first, I'll make a little history here tonight. For the first time in the history of this meeting, I think I agree with him a little bit. For what it's worth, Department, I just read articles in the paper where I'm being added on from this TVA, another $10 a month, my bill, and they dumped out sludge and everything up here, and it seemed to me like we might be paying for something. Then they're gonna come and give us something up here, a grant? I feel like the federal income tax guy knocking on the door saying, I'm here to help you. But, and I appreciate, I'm not trying to be overly funny, but I guess I'm just born that way. But, you know, I'd like to see, are we gonna lose the thing, in your professional opinion, will we lose this thing if we roll it over and have a study session? Either one of you. You think we'll lose it?
The debt, what he's asking is, if we put this off to a study session, it'll be 30 days prior to approval, which will then go through the commission cycle. What would be the earliest we could have that approved, Ms. Dursky?
The study session is what, the beginning of July?
And then it would be
Theoretically, they
third
go
week in
through
July, and then go through the
Commission in August.
August. So it'd be August. What does that do on the deadline?
That's really up to EESI. They have a council at EESI that meets, and, you know, these funds are available to be pulled and granted to somebody else if somebody applies for it. So I don't have a good answer for you on that. I just know when we deal with funding like this, it has a tendency to go very quickly, which the chairman alluded to, that this money has been allocated fairly quickly. So,
Mr. Connect, when did you first start working on this? Do you recall when the facilities you presented originally, and then you presented your findings, and
right, it was in the November Facilities Committee.
so November of last year is when this program, when we started down this path. All right. Before we take the second on the defer, Mr. Gregory, did you have one more thing?
I'd just like to, since you're on the Facilities Committee, I would like for you to give your feelings about this.
Well, I mean, obviously, this is where we were headed, with, you know, the whole reason we've expanded that Internet program, as I said, was to get those meters, to create that data. You know, we've talked about efficiencies, and that's pretty much been the focus of Facilities Committee for some time, is creating more and more efficiencies. This was a program, and I don't know if you recall or not, but he came in November. I know he did an exhaustive study, looked at all sorts of data. Ms. Dursky, I know, worked with him, Mr. Williams, Mr. Marshall. He did commend our energy guy, Mr. Stark, by saying that he's doing an excellent job, but he identified the projects that and the adjustments that he's talking about. They are guaranteeing the loan payment through energy reduction. That's a fairly common process through these sorts of things, with a net cash flow of whatever it was, $23,000. You know, I support this type of initiative, certainly. I don't, with a guaranteed payment, I'm not uncomfortable about it, because the payment guarantee is with them. I know they're I guess you're a multi-billion-dollar organization. Yeah, multi-billion-dollar company, so I'm not concerned about them guaranteeing that at all. You know, I'm in support of the program. We've been working with them, and they've been working with our staff, I guess, for a better part of about 7 or 8 months now. So, does that answer your question, Mr. Gregory? Mr. Marshall, did you have something? My eyesight's going, his hearing's going. All right, I'll now need to get a second on deferring this. Mr. Duncan, are you still willing to second, Mr. Wise's motion? All right, we got a motion and a second. All in favor of deferring this, in essence, for 30 days, send it to a study session, then 30 days on approval. Oh, Ms. Dursky, did you have something?
Just a thought, might it be possible to have a study session prior to the special called board meeting at the end of this month? That would allow us then to get this onto the June, or the July commission cycle. It's a lot of special called meetings, I know.
Yeah. I mean, you know, we could, if you're talking about trying to hold a study session, are you talking about on the same night, or you want us to, so hold a study session immediately prior?
Yes, and then this could then be placed on the agenda of the special called meeting to be acted upon and then sent to the commission in
Wouldn't
July.
I believe she just means just one item. So.
Wouldn't it be just a bit more expedient if we just placed it on the special called agenda and discussed it and made a decision at that point?
True.
You following what we're saying there, Mr. Wise? What Ms. Dursky was suggesting is we've already identified that we have a need for a special called meeting between now and the end of the month. That perhaps rather than putting this off 30 days and risk the earmark that they're holding at the state for us on this money, that we would just defer it to that special called meeting that we'll be having sometime within the next 2 weeks whenever Ms. Dursky is ready for it.
I'm willing to change that motion.
All right, so the motion to defer then is to a yet to be named special called meeting between now and the end of the month. Mr. Duncan, is that all right? All right, so we have a motion and a second. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Well, and I tell you what, Mr. Duncan, without objection, this could be historical that Mr. Brown is seconding Mr. Wise's motion. So we will record Mr. Brown as a second. We do not discuss motions to defer. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ms. Dunn is opposed. Any other in opposition? I'm going to go down as opposed as well, simply because I think we should move forward. That motion to defer passes, and we'll take this back up sometime within the next couple of weeks. All right.
What you said next couple of weeks.
Well, today's what's today's date? 21st. Next 9 days, Mr. Brown. Mr.
Okay.
Sometime within 9 days. All right, and it has been pointed out to me that we also had on that report, tell Mr. Hale he's going to have to get me better prepared next time, Indian Lake Elementary School. See, have these, they had a request to install 2 additional canopies. Has that been bid already, Mr. Williams? It is out for bid, so we really don't have anything to approve at this point. Is that right? All right, we don't have anything to approve. We're waiting on those bids to come in. If they are in between now and the special called meeting within the next 9 days, we'll see if we can put those on that agenda.
I think they're scheduled though for next Tuesday morning.
That's all right. 28. That's within 9 days, I think. All right. Was there something else, Mr. Brewer? No, that's all right. All right, let's, I think that concludes everything I was supposed to do. Mr. Hale fuss at me if I didn't get it right, but that concludes Facilities and Maintenance Committee. Next item is Compensation Committee. Mr. Gregory?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First one is discussion and action regarding full-time or part-time employees. And that's toward the end of the, I don't believe it has a page number on it. It's 247. It's after 246. This is something we've worked on for several months. And I believe, Mr. Long, that you said you'd like to see something very simple, and that's pretty simple, but I believe it covers everything. So, make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Gregory. There's a second by Mr. Wise. Any discussion? Mr. Gregory, if you would, just kind of summarize for us what this is.
Full-time is defined at 32 hours or more per week with some exceptions. And the exceptions are the bus drivers, which are 4.5 to 5 hours per day. And it does, but it does not include sub-bus drivers, but it does include bus attendants. And it also includes school nutrition workers working 25 hours per week or more. And we have approximately, as it mentioned, I think we covered this pretty well, the study session, 60 employees, custodians, and childcare who are currently receiving benefits who are below working less than 32 hours per week will be grandfathered into the plan, and hopefully that the staff will be able to correct some of these before school starts. So how many, Ms. Dursky, would you say that we have corrected in the last year?
Somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 or to 50.
As I've said many times, I know many of you have heard this, that there's a lot more progress been made on this full-time, part-time working conditions than many of us realize, because it's something we don't see day to day. But I do know the staff's worked very long hours to try to get this accomplished.
All right, thank you. I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
The next one is discussion or action regarding salary supplements. This is with our contract that we have, and due to, it will be as of now until we go through committee meeting or so forth, that our supplement schedule will be as the same as it was in 2010 or 11 supplement schedule. So moved.
All right, I have a motion. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Wise. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Gregory?
That was a starting point on that supplement thing. That was just starting. And the third one is discussion or action regarding compensation study for classified employees. Something that we have discussed for several different compensation committee meetings. And I would like for Ms. Dursky or Mr. Ott, maybe one or both of you, to comment on this and the need, because we have so many different situations in our county where our ranges are not matching up with the needs with the employees' level of work.
Mr. Ott, if you would.
Mr. Long, we have talked about this before. We have a number of different issues concerning compensation, especially when you talk about classified compensation, also certified compensation, where we have some anomalies that we need to get corrected. We also have some wage scale imbalances that need to be looked at, and also some policies that directly impact all of our employees when you think about promotions or demotions and how that they impact the wage scale moving forward. So I think a compensation, we haven't had one since 1995. I believe at that time, Ms. Dursky can point out that we thought that we were going to have one every 10 years. It's now been almost 20. So we really need to have this looked at again as quickly as possible.
Motion approved.
I have a motion. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Duncan. You know, one of the things I think that probably would be helpful as well, I don't know if we have to take that up tonight, but I would also like to see just a salary audit of our classified and certified employees. Make sure that everybody's being paid according to scale. I know in smaller organizations you can certainly get out of kilter, and in an organization this large, I'm sure that that's possible as well. I have a motion, a second. Is there any further discussion, Mr. Wise?
Question, any idea on cost?
Again, I think the compensation committee really should look at a scope of work, and once we define that scope of work, we can clearly define what it's going to cost us.
So do we want to make a motion that the compensation committee come up with a scope of work to do a compensation study for classified employees?
And that's the intent, and I may not have said that, but that is the intent, yes.
I'd like to amend that motion to that language, please.
Who made the original? Mr. Gregory. All right, I have a motion to amend. Is there a second on the amendment? Second by Mr. Duncan. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right, as amended, back to the main motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll show that passes. Was there anything else, Mr. Gregory? That's it. All right. Next item on our agenda is communication from board members. I will exercise some privilege here and go first again this evening. It has been noted that tonight is Ms. Wheeler's last board meeting with us. Not her last day, but it is her last board meeting. And then we did receive an email that it's not just Ms. Wheeler's last board meeting with us. It is also Mr. Ott's last board meeting with us. Ms. Wheeler is retiring, and Mr. Ott is just moving to a different location. So I just want to thank both of you for what you've done for the school system, what you've done for the county. I know you've worked diligently. Ms. Wheeler, I know, has some plans for retirement, and Mr. Ott, I suppose, has plans for work. So just thank both of you. Any other board members? Ms. Silkwood, do you have anything?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I had the opportunity to attend the Howard Elementary Wax Museum event. I guess it was last month, and I really enjoyed that. I thought it was a great way for the students to learn history and hone their speaking skills too. So I really enjoyed that event.
Thank you, Ms. Brewer. Do you have anything? No, Ms. Dunn?
I think everybody's probably aware Beach High School took first place in softball, so congratulations to those girls. And the other thing on not such a happy note is, and I guess too, just to kind of keep it aware, is that the bleachers that were supposed to have been going to Beach High School this summer are not happening. So that's just something I'd kind of like for us to keep on top here so we can maybe get those done. I know with summer, come and going, it's going to be hard to do, but we don't need to forget about that.
And Ms. Dunn, thank you. Let me do update the board that may not be aware. As you recall, the county commission allocated $300,000 to Beach High School for improvements. The board took that allocation, we put it out to bid, received bids to replace all the bleachers, 31-year-old bleachers in the gym. This board approved that bid also unanimously. We sent that to the Education Committee, where it failed on a 2-2 vote, 2 votes yes and 2 abstentions. Somehow showed up on a Budget Committee agenda, where it was then deferred for 30 days for the county commission to now consider taking that money back. They wanted us to only replace 1/3 of the bleachers, which we can't do from a liability standpoint, let alone an aesthetic standpoint, when you have 31-year-old bleachers right next to a new one. I know that Mr. Marshall has commented that if it were a third, we could have picked any of the thirds because they were all in equally bad shape and well beyond their life of usefulness. So unfortunately, that's where it is. We'll see what happens over at the commission if in fact they do choose to take that $300,000 and apply that back to county projects versus in our schools. So that's where it's at. Thank you, Ms. Dunn, for reminding us of that. Mr. Daniels?
Yes, I had an opportunity to attend the Venice Stewart kindergarten graduation, and I just wanted to commend Dr. Valentine and her staff. That school is a melting pot of diversity, and it's amazing what they're able to do with the children of such diverse backgrounds when they start as kindergartners, and what they do with them to get them up to speed, and then work with them through the remaining grades and pass them on successfully to middle school.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Do you have anything?
Yes, sir. I too want to thank Ms. Wheeler, and I want to thank Mr. Ott for your service, both of you, to Sumner County Schools. You have made impressions on numerous young people, and I appreciate you for it. You're leaving huge, not literally, shoes to fill. But I think the main point with the both of you that I want to point out is, I sit up here and you do your work every day and you do it diligently and you do it well. But more important than that, I think I've gained 2 new friends. And I hope you feel that way. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Mr. Duncan, do you have something?
I'd just like to say I congratulate Mrs. Wheeler and also Mr. Art. When I came here about 23 years ago, Miss Wheeler kind of took me under her wing, guided me along the way. We've had a good relationship. Everybody looks up to her because she does such a splendid job. But she's not going to really retire because I'm trying to find something else for her to do after her retirement. We appreciate Mr. Art and thank him for work that he's done in the school system. We're going to miss both of them. They have contributed a whole lot to our school system. We want to thank her. I'd just like to say that I'm proud of 9 students that I taught. 4 of them got their doctorate degree. I taught their last 4 classes, and then I had 5 to go ahead and get their master's degree. So I'm proud of them.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Mr. Gregory, do you have anything?
Quickly, there's no more fun part of a school year than, I believe Mr. Daniels mentioned this, than attending schools at their end of the year awards day, because that is, after all the battles that go on throughout the year, you see how much students have achieved. And I really enjoy attending those and seeing the spark in the student's eye, and also the parents, and being very proud of them. And also, there's no one that has given more to the Sumner County school system for the past, 10 or 12 years than Judy Wheeler. She has given so much to so many, for so many years. Mr. Ott, I don't know why you're leaving. I really don't. He may be coming back next year.
We're going to have to add a big number to the budget to do that, I suspect.
And also, Dr. Phillips, I wish you would mention, we have 2 of the new principals. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Brown, do you have anything? Go right ahead.
First off, we want to thank you, man. Mr. Dwayne Olam's off on a trip to Europe, and we have approved, City of Westmoreland approved the street in front of the high school to be signed, and we'll have if you guys would like to come up, we'll let you know when we're going to do that. It'll take 2 weeks to get our commissioners, get our workers together to drive a post in the ground. But we'll get that done. We want to invite you up to
You need the maintenance department to come up and help out with that?
Well,
He'll have it done tomorrow morning.
They're going to do that on Saturdays, I think.
All right.
But to Mr. Dwayne Olam, that is retired, a great principal and all. He's to be commended for his work, too. And then we'll have Chamber of Commerce. Dr. Phillips, you and and Don, you've been invited to dinner. There'll be a dinner meeting, Chamber of Commerce at Westmoreland on Thursday night, the 14th of July.
Who's paying?
Don't worry about the cost. I've invited you over. Limited. We'll have 35, 40 people there, but Glenn's he'll pay me and I'll pay them. But anyway, and finally, enough gibberish, but my dear friend, Mr. Ted Wise, made the statement on the front end here that there would be a game played between White House and Westmoreland before the season actually started. If by some miracle and all, White House should beat Westmoreland, the game does not count.
All right, so it's just a practice run.
If Westmoreland should by some miracle beat White House, the game counts.
I got you.
Okay.
All right, we'll make a note of that.
Thanks, sir.
All right, next on our agenda is comments from the director, Dr. Phillips. We would like to welcome you to your first full meeting. The first meeting you were at wasn't so pleasant about bus advertisers, but hopefully this one went a little better for you. Do you have any comments for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, I do, and I want to tell you all that it's been a fast first week, but it's been a good one, and I've seen many of you at some community meetings, and I appreciate your support for this first board meeting and helping me guide me along a little bit. I do want to have introductions for three people that are with us that we have promoted just this week to be principals in our system. First, Andy Mitchell. And I just wanted the board to recognize these people. Andy Mitchell is going to Indian Lake as the principal. And so we're excited about that. Also, Darren Frank. Darren's going to Ellis. He's been at Hendersonville High School. And then David Woodard is going to Bethpage. And so I wanted all of you to help me welcome these individuals that are all three from our system, have been doing tremendous work with our students, and now they've been assigned the ultimate task of being a building leader. And so we're excited about them being part of that job at each of those schools, and we know they're going to do great work. Couple other things. One, Miss Wheeler leaving, and all of you have so aptly stated her role in our system for so long. She has been just a tremendous resource for me in the last 7 days, and I hope for the next 9 she will be. And even after that, I'm going to make sure I keep her cell phone number on speed dial so I can call her and find out the history of things. And she has so graciously said that she would do that, and I appreciate it. Her heart, you can tell from the very first time that you meet Miss Wheeler, her heart really is Sumner County Schools. Anybody that's dealt with her knows that, and so we just want to tell you how much we appreciate you and how much I appreciate you and what you've done to help me. And then Mr. Ott is leaving us, and Mr. Ott's actually one of the first people I talked to in our system to try to get paperwork and those kind of things started on the transition, and we became friends very quickly, and so I certainly hate to see him leave. I know he's done a tremendous amount of work for our system, and I'm already forced him to let me have his cell phone number for speed dial, so he's still going to be around a little bit, but I want to express my appreciation to him as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Dr. Phillips. With no other business on our agenda, ladies and gentlemen, we stand adjourned.